Body on the back of your tongue, a silvering globe, lodged like yesterday's. Sex, a symptom so bold, binds like the memory of a first unkindness, caved, irreversible, as the palm's chained line of the head, which you trace with her index finger. Depression to cold. Year of tar sands, 4-degree scare, year of the aquifer. At first, night sweats, night light, dreams of a heath rage, junk effects, vital functions like breathing. And the mind's pigment diffused like a gum bichromate. Question, is there a place for a book on song? The crisis is the end of the commons, of very slow violence, vocalization reductions, suggesting declines in foraging, breeding. We think and we say, not because we did not love. I'm going to read from my manuscript. It's called Middle Time, and I'll just say a couple of quick things about the book project. I'm thinking in this project, a lot about embodiments and the experience of embodiments under our current biopolitical regime in America. And I'm thinking also about embodiments in the context of what is certainly escalating ecological crisis conditions. I'm thinking about embodiment at a moment in which I think our bodies are increasingly mechanized and administered and subject to risks and hazards that are largely out of our control. And I'm also thinking in this book about secondariness and the concept of the middle, what it means to be in the middle. Perhaps this is an attempt to think against very common rhetoric of end times that I think is quite prevalent today. So, I'm working primarily, you won't be able to see the poems obviously when I'm reading them, but I'm working primarily with the fragment, thinking about that form. Okay, so the first series of poems that I'll read are from the series is called Fragments, and there's an epigraph. All deaths are violent. And that's Tikkun. Habitat loss, water, air, ultraviolet light, radiative subcutaneous light. We are forcing names. Think flesh without figural unity, critical body functions. Think a tumor busts a loose stitch. Sublethal biological effects, right, repugnant, that is, body scuds across the ground, blown. A violence white, a sink of milk, predicative of chlorpyrifos, containers for brutal acts, long-term population-level impacts. Endocrine disruption, extractable wealth, tip the risk cup, no starker health. Binding action, binding secretion, bioaccumulation over virtually all the earth. Consider the case of maize. Including anxiety, hyperactivity, a measure within normal range, world at risk, artificial additives, thought to mimic the effects of whose estrogen, force the dose, perfect as an egg. Try looking away, try looking away, try looking away, marked by stuttering, trembling, dizziness, nausea, intrusion of a thought. Finest pollen, flush the season, a kind of akathisia, all the windows clapping shut. Gestational BPA exposure, urine levels, behavioral indices, whose abstention, whose false positive, a world gone wrong. Okay, I'm going to read another very new piece. And this one is comprised almost entirely of appropriated language. I've been like reading toxicology textbooks for this critical piece that I'm doing on the Risk Society and scientific risk assessment. So you'll hear some of that language in this piece. And in particular, I was making use of a diagram in this textbook. It's called a risk space axis diagram, whose axes correspond to what the authors call perceived dreadedness of various risks in the environment. And one axis, for example, maps risks that are not observable and not controllable by humans, and therefore are more likely to be regulated by government. And a second axis, as another example, maps risks that are not observable but controllable. Or should I say? So, I'll read this piece. Unobservable, uncontrollable, most likely to provoke calls. Unknown to those exposed. Activity is involuntary. Activity is dreaded. Activity is globally catastrophic. DNA technology, electric fields, DES, radioactive waste, nuclear reactor accidents, uranium mining, pesticides, nuclear weapons, mercury, PCBs, satellite crashes, asbestos insulation, coal burning, pollution. High risk of consequences to future generations. Fatal, not equitable, not easily reduced. Microwave ovens, water fluoridation, nitrates, saccharin, water chlorination, polyvinyl chloride, oral contraceptives, diagnostic x-rays, IUDs, antibiotics, lead, aspirin, vaccines. Understand behavioral responses to stimulate constructive risk communication. Biomarkers, cross-species investigations, systematic approaches. Advances are certain to improve the quality of risk assessment for a broad array of health endpoints as scientific findings substitute data for assumptions and help to describe and model uncertainty more credibly. Summary, what is it that you dread? I'm going to read a few pieces from a series called Second Story of Your Body. There's an epigraph. Everything could actually collapse, and that's Quentin Mayassu. Risk stoppage, all matter vehicular. There a brutality that isn't a car or a person. It can't be any objectivism. The ideas a moving that isn't a moving that isn't a sclerosis. There you go, heteronomy. Refusals look at amenorrhea, story of body beveled years. This bay a finger, this crossing breaks the heart, like body gouging asphalt. Interpretation, interruption, like will to myth, to change. Rifted, we return from the new hospital. Neat barbarisms gone wrong. Young jays ransack the understory. Pending trial. Whose testimony, whose scrap of democracy? Undoing the ascetic, nearly impossible. Today, a woman's body eats itself. Toxins on extraordinary bang out the days. Neoplasia, in fact, a second skull. The child's gone, we fought years with which to fuck the sick. Environmental hazards, utter ordination. Nightmares between the legs. Body, this time, with body to give away. Body occurs at a limit, a tissue limit, a blood limit, a broken cell tube euthoxyethanol limit. What kind of limit are you? Decide what kind of limit you are. Wear air-supplied breathing apparatuses to protect your nose, throat, and lungs. Wear nitrile or PVC gloves and chemical splash goggles to protect your eyes and skin. Say an art blackens as a river in sickness bends. In case of exposure, call. Whose other are you? Decide whose other you are. The measure of the actual body is the measure. Trick zero, subcutaneous limit. Garbage cell limit. The limit is said not. What kind of song, if you'll sing? Decide what kind of song you'll sing if you'll sing. If body's impenetrable, if body begins and ends against, body no longer exists. Lacking measure in her incredible need, separation fell the dwelling, toward a sojourn that isn't evisceration. No, the network is sick when you cut out of the woman, a stuck constitution, a lone methodology, a lone Antigone, Threnos Aporius. Were it not for the orders of music hidden, we should be claimed by the preponderant void. First, there was humming. Okay, I'm going to read a few parts of a series called The Middle. There's an epigraph. Now, a whole is that which has beginning, middle, and end. A beginning is that which is not itself necessarily after anything else, and which has naturally something else after it. An end is that which is naturally after something itself, either as its necessary or usual consequence, and with nothing else after it. And a middle, that which is by nature after one thing and has also another after it. That's from Aristotle's Poetics. Do you experience depression, embarrassment, painful intercourse, hair, aligning knit of teeth? Spread the pack, bring water. Regret a dearth, bores like a drill, only after a symptom makes of your body a middle or cave, a derelict. Quiet, the spigot sealed off, cast away as any oath, a blasphemy, profound boredom on its reel spinning out. I will fidelity, but don't know how to. Protect oneself, one body, means nothing to anything. Captive cry, captive creology, pressed as middle time. The temporality of the middle is the temporality of waste. An aesthetics of the middle dreams in skin. For years I wasted my body, tight coil around a hook, without consequence. The planet, dimming like anyone, insisted time, spent in such a way we did not have to reckon with it. Force the middle, its non-ache, ultradian cycling, most earthly condition for those who know no earth. Time of sheet melts, time of cicadas. There was love, and then there was wanting to fuck, fattening vine, stone hill, stone fruit. Time of panic by, time of food riots. There was sickness like a pregnancy, and then there wasn't. Watching cold, animal or God, watching cold as though from another room, whose name is precarity. One might say hottest on record. One might say faster than models can capture. One might say persistence of desire. One might say 1,700 miles of energy security crosses hundreds of bodies, bitumen, open, fluid pockets, viscous omen, won't flow unless heated, diluted, leaking crude, work of the middle, surfactant, metal hollowed, foul, fouling air, water land, once water followed. When the oil, when the food, when we are well again, will we conceive a child, crystalline structures, set to generous music, difficult as stopping a love from devouring a sharded mind, firm diagnosis, white atmosphere, sick now with snow, awaiting burial. Ask, 1 in 3, 1 in 5, would you have done what we did? When the water runs out, the middle runs out, until then. Iron river ripped dark as a throat in this summer of morning, carbon sink conifers combing out the lights, road and mill, pulp stank, film, a tongue, scum, somnolent, inside of a house, basically chlorides, urine, pulse, 100,000 square kilometers a day, fighting back, ordinary hour, tracing now, goes and goes. And I will just read a few parts from another series called Fragments. The epigraph. In the exercise and violence over life and death more than in any other legal act, law reaffirms itself. But in this very violence, something rotten in law is revealed. That's Walter Benjamin. Private like a thought for a wrist, for the thigh, plot or block crowded out a fist. In the event of an emergency, there will be, in the lungs and throat, dinning. First, demarcate an aesthetics of injury. Touch me there, please. First, ask a name for this disease, the truth that nature means in me, grown thick with we. No one ever touches us, create no value. Blunt objects, bone fracture, speech centers, leave torn, human breasts, leave skulls, non-lethal, rubber, wax, plastic, wood, projectiles, loathe the body, own the hematoma, the object is pain. War heaves itself upon a wealth of health, slow sinning, smacks of task, locate some evicted cut, inhabit that incision in such a way that can't be used. Just a couple more little fragments. Noonish moon, slight as a relic, somebody botched the lawn. We want immunity, that is ceremony, exception to exception. What we want is no riot, nothing so holy, frenzied clutch, stillborn, coordinated, administered harm. Cultivate sanctuary.